Now, it's interesting because if you look through the Constitution and you look at some of the nasty constitutional conventions, first of all, anything that was done before 1964 was done out of convention. And anything that was done that you see a year other than ending in 4 since then is done by the legislature. So let's look at some of the things that have been done proposed by the legislature. Let's see.
Article 2A was 1982. That was a good one.
Right? Which would be, 1982, okay, but look at Supreme Courts. Establishing the Supreme Court, 1966. 72A, one of the really nasty ones.
So that's precedent that the Supreme Court can establish law.
That is the one that created a Supreme Court that could not be dissolved by the legislature. Prior to that, all courts were subject to the pleasure of the legislature. Article 73, 1978, which gives the court the ability to make laws with the effect of law. Article 84, which basically corrupted the oath of office, 1970. All these really nasty, all the really nasty amendments were the vehicle, Article Part 1, Article 6, which replaced the description of the principles of the Constitution from something specific to something nebulous. Struck out local control to a large degree, and interestingly enough, removed the authority of the legislature to authorize schools, though we continue to do it. It was originally proposed out of convention, but when it was proposed out of convention, it failed. It was then reintroduced by the legislature with some subtle twists. That's been one of Dick Marple's big things, is he say, well, what's on the ballot, what's in the Constitution now wasn't on the ballot, but he was referring to the wrong ballot. It is what was on the ballot in 66, I believe. Part 1, Article 6 was amended in 68. So it was what was on the ballot in 68. It was not what was on the ballot in 64, out of convention. So, you know, we see all these things. People talk about what was on the, you know, whether or not Article 74A with the you know, where it says have the right to make rules with the force of law. Everybody says that wasn't on the ballot. Well, guess what? It wasn't on the ballot out of convention. I believe it probably was on the ballot out of the legislature.
So, Dan, my original question to you then is this one, the CACR 29.
Okay, CACR 29.
That's the one I was referring to when I said, how is that different than 21? I think it was 21 that I testified.
Okay, 21 is an amendment to Part 1, to Article 2, to Part 2, Article 83, form of government, which describes how things are actually carried out. CACR 29 is an amendment to Part 1, Article 6.
Okay.
And instead of simply saying high principles, reinserts fundamental principles of the Constitution, aka evangelical principles, but we don't have to go there. Okay. It also reestablishes the authority of the legislature to authorize schools, so we can actually legitimately authorize charter schools. Because without that language, since that language was there, and we removed it, we don't have the authority to authorize charter schools. neither, and because we don't have the authority to authorize schools, we can't delegate it to the Department of Education, who has been authorizing charter schools. Obviously unconstitutional. We also struck out, and this is part of what I'll be presenting, the way the amendment was made. It was made by redlining the original Article 6. And in so doing, Part 1, Article 6 used to say, these principles are important, and therefore, because we need to spread these things throughout the community, we give the legislature the authority to authorize schools. It was the purpose for public education. We struck the purpose. It now says, because these things are important, you have the right to hire your own teachers, which doesn't make any sense. They no longer say, because these things are important, we have to spread them throughout the community, and therefore we adulterated the whole thing. The language that remains is confusing, probably actually accurate as to who has the authority to hire teachers. Bodies corporate are towns. If you go back and parse the original language as to what bodies corporate are, as opposed to bodies religious. A body is a body politic. A body corporate is an incorporated body politic, i.e. town, school district. But the language is sufficiently changed that people don't really know what it means. We struck out towns. Town was a very generic term, which just meant any cluster of buildings. And so people have lost the knowledge of what that article means, and we can insert there. Okay, it used to be that when the towns had the right to hire and support their teachers, it was the teachers that really controlled curriculum. That's been lost. So one of the things that I propose to insert is that the locality, the political subdivision responsible for education, has the authority to control the curriculum. Just spelling it out. But that's the difference. So here, in Part 1, Article 6 says, this is what the people have the right to do and what power the legislature has. Part 2, Article 83 says, this is how it will be carried out. That the legislature will be able to decide how much money they're going to spend on education, is basically what it says.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's go to what a hearing looks like. So you can turn off the